And I would like to announce our special additional session of Fireside Chat, titled Engineering and the Future of Work. So let's welcome Jeremy Rossman, founder of Make School, and David Corbin, director of content and strategy at Tech in Asia. Welcome, Jeremy and David.
Hello.
Hi.
So yes, Jeremy very kindly agreed to join us for a fireside chat on very short notice.
I'm your consolation prize.
You're a prize for all of us. So thank you for joining us. Jeremy's story is actually really fascinating. I met him a year or so ago in Tokyo because it happens that even though he has a San Francisco-based company, he has actually a huge presence here in Asia. So Jeremy, just tell us a little bit about Make School and what it does.
So Make School is a computer science and software engineering school headquartered in San Francisco. And we run two main kinds of programs: a summer program targeted at high school and university students where we teach iPhone development, introductory, intermediate, advanced programs where students get to launch their own app. And then we run this 2-year program that's a full alternative to university, which kind of scares parents. There's no diplomas, no degrees, but you get a job, and it's full-time in San Francisco. So we're one of the unusual education companies that is brick and mortar, teaching students in a classroom. And we also happen to share a good number of investors with Tech in Asia.
Okay.
So we're in the same family.
Always good to have another brother or sister around. So I want to talk about the 2-year program in a second, but first, when we talk about kind of startup boot camps or hackathons or hacking boot camps, it's really difficult to understand what's a good boot camp, what's a bad boot camp, what we should be looking for. So not even talking about Make School, just in general, what is the signs of a good opportunity for someone who wants to increase their engineering ability?
So, the proof is kind of in the pudding. One of the easiest ways to determine is actually to talk to students. And I find that prospective students who don't do that are making a mistake. The best that we're seeing right now in the Silicon Valley are the schools that are putting an industry focus. There's a lot of fear in the education world that if you talk directly to industry, they're going to turn you into like a terrible vocational school where you're only going to be training drones and you're going to lose all the wonderful features of a well-rounded education. And it turns out that when you go talk to companies and you say, hey, what do you want when you hire an engineer? None of them say, I want a mindless drone who's never taken a philosophy class and can't write. That's just not something people say. And it turns out that if you talk straight to companies, talk straight to industry, they tend to be quite nuanced in what they want, and they're very open about telling you what you should be teaching, what they think. And so it's one of the things we do. You talk to 10, 20, 30 companies, you kind of average their responses. You get a very good sense for what you should be doing, and there's no secrets there. Many schools don't do this. The ones that do a better job.
So you're saying that if someone wants to kind of get better, they should think in terms of what industry they want to work in, not in terms of what language they want to learn? Or are the two kind of inextricably connected?
So a good programming school, good computer science education is not going to be super language focused. You're going to have to learn the latest and greatest tools so that you can hit the ground running in industry from day one when you get hired. But at the same time, a really good software engineer is someone who can pick up a new language on relatively short notice. So it's more important to look at the school's instructors, content, curriculum, and especially industry connections, which influence the instructors, content, and curriculum, as well as the community of students and alumni. More so than trying to nitpick on a specific programming language.
Now that sounds like a very kind of forward-thinking approach, but I would guess that most people who are getting into programming for the first time kind of just want the initial, okay, so I learn C++, or I learn this one language, I go on, I learn Python, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of thinking, is that just kind of misguided, or is that expected for like your very early steps?
I think that again, the language specifically is not really the top concern. What we find when we talk to companies.
No, I understand that, but in terms of from the young person's perspective.
But yes, so from the young person's perspective, there's sometimes a misunderstanding of the skill they should be building. You think you want to learn how to program, right? That's what everyone. We need more software engineers. You should learn how to program. It turns out, when you talk to companies, they want something a little bit more subtle. They want people who can make great products. And it so happens that the tool that most fast-growing companies these days use to make their products are software. right? And so the real education you should be getting if you want to get into this, in 2016, the most in-demand skill set is actually that of a product-focused engineer. And so you should be looking for a program through the lens of what it's going to teach you how to do in a holistic way, not just what language it is, but what is the end outcome. At Make School, when we teach you a language, you have to launch a product written in that language. And I would argue that the process of designing, programming, and launching the product is the most important part. And if we teach you Java and Android, or we teach you Swift and iOS, it's not a huge difference. What's important is that if you learned a programming language, you understood the mathematical and theoretical foundations behind it, and you've used that to create a product that people want.
Okay. So I understand that part, and I guess I understand kind of like the focus of your summer sessions. But now if we're talking about a 2-year program, we're really getting a little bit more into the weeds. It's much more complicated. So how do you keep things fresh over 2 years? What is the curriculum like? Is it just constantly building products? Like how do you structure that?
So educating someone for 2 years is a really great responsibility, right? You can't just be teaching them how to program all day, every day. You're not going to have a well-rounded human being, not a functional engineer, not a good team player. The background behind launching the 2-year program actually is that I was a student at MIT for 2 years, and then I left. Don't tell my mom. And I realized that I had sort of crammed in some of the best parts of what was available at MIT early in my education, bypassing requirements to do so, and then was left with 2 years ahead of me filled with some of the prerequisites for things I'd already done. So when you look at a 2-year program, we have about 1 quarter non-technical, 3 quarters technical content. Non-technical content, a lot of communication, teamwork, public speaking, design, and a lot of the product development learnings that we discuss. When a student comes at Make School, they have a couple options in every sort of point in time as to what technologies to work in, and classes at Make School now are between 4 to 8 weeks long, and some of them actually repeat. So you don't always have to catch the web development section like now. You can do it in 4 weeks when it reboots. And at each one of those 4 to 8 week sessions, you're going to go through the cycle of learning the technology and building something meaningful with it. And as the program grows, we start switching from individual projects and work to group work. It turns out that very, very few schools focus on group work. And almost no companies require individual work. Every single app on your phone, with very few exceptions, every piece of hardware you're touching, everything was made by a large team of people. Line, right? Right. Line has a huge number of software engineers collaborating on that one product. So if you want to join the Line team to be a software engineer and you don't have experience working on a large team, then you're handicapped from the start. And there are, again, so few schools that teach you that. So one of our great focuses as we build towards the later stages of the program is exposing students to opportunities to work in larger and larger groups and simulate the environment of a larger team. And this is where you get a lot of the more well-rounded education automatically, because to work in a team effectively, to deal with the frustrations of teammates messing up and being delayed and having to reach consensus on design decisions and all of that is really actually a formative experience for a young student and one of the most important parts of an education, I think.
Very thorough response. I appreciate it. So one thing, going back to your dropping out of MIT, I think that the dropping out and also making Make School, I think there was a video about you that went fairly viral last year. And so now does your mom feel okay that her son is a viral video star?
So the moment that my mom became okay with it was actually a little bit earlier.
Okay.
After our first summer academy, the results were so good, this first summer session we offered in the Silicon Valley, that we decided to repackage that curriculum and start offering it to schools. And the first ever iPhone development class at MIT was introduced by Make School using our curriculum, and then they invited me to come teach it.
Okay.
So I left MIT, and then a year and a half later, I was invited back to teach a 4-credit class. And that's when my parents were more okay with it.
Yeah.
And then after that, actually, Carnegie Mellon adopted our curriculum for a graduate level iPhone development course in their Silicon Valley campus, and I became an adjunct there. And that's when my dad was, no longer.
Oh, so your dad took longer to crack. MIT wasn't good enough, but Carnegie Mellon, okay.
Okay.
All right, I understand. So when we talk about EdTech in general, I think that what your company is doing, you've gotten funding from YC, from East Ventures, from 500 startups as well?
Yes, we have.
Draper Nexus?
actually Draper, like Tim
Draper.
Tim Draper.
So you have really like just a who's who of investors. But we were talking backstage, and you raised a very interesting point. Unlike most ed tech, you guys are not built to scale. Like, it's not an app that can rapidly get a lot of downloads and active users and go from there. You are really getting users one person at a time, building a school, like a class at a time. So how do you convince those VCs that they should back this really, cool and unique company, but not one that is necessarily going to scale and become a rocket ship in the next couple of years?
It's an excellent question. We do think that we can become a rocket ship in the next couple of years, but the ways that we do so don't pattern match as easily for tech VCs to what they're typically used to seeing in high growth and fast growth companies. We can't be a Facebook, right? We can't support hundreds of millions, billions of users with a relative handful of engineers. But at the same time, we see a huge opportunity in that it's become so fashionable to go after business opportunities in the Silicon Valley that have that ability to sort of automatically scale, that there's a relative lack of people targeting really great businesses that can grow very fast that require manual work. And what we find is in our space, most schools don't try to scale. Harvard is not trying to get bigger, right? Make School is. And there's a vacuum left, especially in higher education, for high quality offerings. And once you get off the top 10 list of universities in the United States, you have a huge number of students who are at other schools who are wanting something at that level and not really able to get it. And we even have students from top universities like MIT, Columbia, Carnegie Mellon who've left to come to Make School instead. So in terms of convincing VCs, what we found is that US tech venture capitalists are a little bit more rigid in their pattern matching and had difficulty imagining how these businesses could get big and fast. In Asia, there's more examples of fast-growing physical education businesses. You go to China, you will see practically there's skyscrapers with New Oriental on them, an English education company that is had massive growth and became listed and was a big success. And so investors in Asia can think of more ways that they've seen physical education companies scale fast and grow fast. What we do at Make School is we have a centralized curriculum development, instructor training in San Francisco, and that powers all of our locations around the world. Our summer program, and I'm very excited to announce it, it's actually not been announced yet, is not only going to be offered in San Francisco, in Sunnyvale, in Los Angeles, and in New York, but today for the first time I'm happy to say that we are also going to be offering this summer Make School Summer Academies in Taipei, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Yeah. And that is, for us, a big jump in scale, more than tripling of the number of students we're expecting as compared to last year. And the way that we can do it is by having the software that powers the classroom, the curriculum that powers the classroom, the instructor training materials and training sessions all in San Francisco, and then have them be powering each location across the world. And as we build content online, build a brand, and have our presence on the web, we're able actually to attract students in a way that mirrors what you see for traditional tech companies. So you were saying we have to get them one by one, but that's becoming less and less true. More and more, they're coming to us.
Last this is
summer,
the point that I want to jump in on. So, in the beginning, your first, say, summer course,
30 students,
was 30 students, and your most recent one was
210.
210, and that's over like about 2.5 years, or no,
4 years.
4 years, sorry.
It's 200.
I know that summer comes once a year.
Yes.
It's been a long day. So in 4 years, you've gone from 30 to over 200. And when we're talking about scaling even more, I guess when I think of, say, a university, to use, I guess, the best analogy, universities are still fairly manual. They send out recruiters to high schools. They go to college fairs. Are those sorts of activities that Make School would also do?
So yes, we do a lot of that. We do a tremendous amount of that, but it's very, very, ROI positive for us. We're in the age of the hackathon. In the United States, every weekend there are between 3,000 to 10,000 high school and university students at a hackathon, spending the entire weekend programming. There are upwards of 10,000 high school students and university students in the U.S. who have seen me speak in person at a hackathon, We can go to one of these events and we can reach thousands of students in a weekend, and these are all programmers in the audience. So my team was at 2 different events this past weekend, and next weekend I land from Hong Kong. It's my last stop in this trip. I land from Hong Kong at 8 a.m. I'm going straight to a hackathon to give the opening talk at 11 a.m. So we do that. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, you can't reach everyone through hackathons. Last summer, we had students from 20 different countries, and we did not go to hackathons in 20 different countries. Students are finding us online because over time, as is the case for universities, the brand builds, reputation builds. And with the clever strategy of having free online content that really drives student developers to our website to start consuming some of the free lessons we have and then make them discover that we actually offer physical courses, we're able over time to increase the proportion of students that come to us through more scalable means. The number one method now, actually, is alumni referrals. So over time, the community has gotten big enough that referred by a friend is the number one way that we're finding students at Make School.
So how would you define your, I guess, escape velocity? Like every startup goes through this period where, it's got this great idea, it's building, it's not quite there yet, and then it kind of finally breaks through and it's more setting its own future. Still a tough battle. There's always a tough battle. It never gets easier. But you just have a bit of breathing room.
Right.
So what does that bit of breathing room look like for Make School?
It's a very good question. We actually have 2 different programs at 2 different stages in their startup life. The summer program is at a growth stage, and the 2-year program is still at a very early stage. The 2-year program is unique in that students don't pay tuition up front. We take a percentage of salary later, which if you're from the United States, you probably are familiar with the student debt crisis in the US and the increasing unaffordability of college. So we're making a big statement there, not taking money up front, taking a percentage of salary later. The summer program has been around for several years. Students do pay up front and are willing to do so in increasing numbers. So the escape velocity for the summer program, I think, is going to be this summer. Fingers crossed. And here's why. Last summer, for the first time, we systematized how we develop curriculum, how we train instructors, and the suite of software that makes our classrooms the most efficient. There's an instructor dashboard, a student dashboard, an integrated solution where students access content, instructors can track their progress, and so on and so forth. That is what is going to be powering locations across the world. Last summer was our test in 3 different cities, San Francisco, Sunnyvale, and New York, trying to replicate the same experience. And the student satisfaction was actually higher than the year prior when we had the same 3 cities, but hadn't systematized it. We were doing things much more manually. There wasn't that software suite. The training was not centralized, and so on and so forth. So once we saw that we ran a summer program in 3 different locations simultaneously with the same curriculum, with a different set of students, different set of instructors, but the experience was substantially similar across all of them, and the quality went up compared to the year prior, even though we more than doubled. That's when we knew, okay, this is ready now to just add more cities, and there's a machine where we can bring this experience to more and more people.
So it sounds like you've got your process down pat, but in terms of your escape velocity, for me, I would define it as now we are profitable. Do you define it more so in that you're capturing mind share, or in terms of dollars and cents?
I define it more as ability to scale rapidly, maintaining quality, which we had been doing. We've been roughly doubling every year, but now we can more than triple. Hoping to actually quadruple this summer, and very, very confident we'll maintain quality. If we do quadruple, we will actually be profitable. If we triple, we'll be very nearly so. A short year away from reaching profitability. So we're getting there. We might choose, as many tech companies do, with the allure of venture money, to run less profitably to grow a little bit faster. But the second piece with the summer program, Escape Velocity, is striking local partnerships. The majority of my meetings here in Singapore are with the government. And there was an amazing announcement from the MCI just a couple days ago, $20 million Sing dollar fund to support future Infocom workers and their education. And in a number of countries, we're discovering different local initiatives, be it companies to partner with, be it government initiatives to align ourselves with, that allow us to really take the Make School experience and leverage a local partner to reach the right audience and operate successfully. And so because we now have something replicatable and systematized, we can come to new cities, not only domestically but internationally, and really work with folks to bring this to more people. In contrast, the 2-year program, we haven't even graduated our first full class of students. We're still in the first year. We did a pilot last year that was only a year long, so they graduated, they all got jobs, there was 11 of them. Now we have 22, we started with 33, we lost a bunch because they got jobs early. We did too good of a job, I think, selecting them. one moment that felt escape velocity-ish is that Google hired a student out of our 2-year program. Even though it's not degree granting, he was straight out of high school. He came to make school instead of going to college. Google hired him as a full-time software engineer. We were very proud about that. But that program, I think, is easily 3-4 years away from an escape velocity moment. But the good news is the summer programs impact it heavily. The more locations we have around the world, the more we can surface local talent. Students who never would have thought of an opportunity to come study in the United States, who didn't have their eye on the US system, or who were in the wrong kind of school. If you're in a British system school preparing for your A-levels, then that makes it really hard to consider a US university and vice versa. And now that we don't have a traditional selection system, right, we're looking more at your passions, the products you've created, how you learn how to program, what you've done in your spare time, not your A-level score or your SAT. We're able to take students with a variety of backgrounds, and as the summer program hits that escape velocity, it's a sourcing strategy also for us to bring students into this 2-year program in San Francisco.
So that reminds me of another point I want to talk about. So we're having a session a little bit later today about the sharing economy. And one thing that this course that you offer seems to suggest, like when I think about it, is that if people are just trying to find a position that works and they can go to make school, get the skills they need, get the position, move on, don't need to waste too much time doing unnecessary things. It seems like the kind of boom in the sharing economy and the gig economy is going to be very beneficial for your for your startup. Do you see it the same way?
We thought we did, and it turns out that so far it doesn't seem to be the case. So it seems like the fact that there's so many more opportunities for someone to control their own job destiny. The gig economy extends to software engineers. How many of you have an app idea you want built? Some of you have the money to have it built, and there's software engineers out there doing gigs all the time, building applications, websites for clients, things like that, right? So we thought, amazing, great demand for this means great demand for Make School. Unfortunately, it feels like it's hurt us more than it's helped, because we attract students at a very critical point in their lives, where typically, unfortunately, thinking long term is something that hasn't quite yet set in. And when you're 18 years old and you come to San Francisco and you come to Make School, and 2 months in, someone offers you a contract for $120,000 a year to make their iPhone application. You call your parents, and that's more than the income they make combined. It's hard to make the decision to stay in a school for even 2 more years, right? Let alone 2 more months. And the gig economy has, as a result, given a short-term sort of reward incentive to forego a long-term education and just go and make some money. And I truly believe that, our goal, our mission, and our responsibility as an institution that is pulling students away from university is to have them emerge as much, if not more, responsible citizens, as much, if not more mature, more functional in the world. It's not just about being prepared to make some money, right? And so, unfortunately, the fact that they can make some money so early, especially because, there's a big range of sophistication in clients. If I prepare someone to pass Google's hiring filter, I can be very proud of that. Google is very selective, right? So that's good. That's really good. And it doesn't mean I've made a fully functional citizen, but at least I've done a pretty good job. And if I do a bunch of other things, they can come out, be a Google engineer, and be a great fully functioning citizen. However, for the same yearly compensation, there's random startups that have raised $200,000 in seed funding from like mom and dad who are making offers to my students. And then these websites where they can find short gigs, including one founded by a good friend of mine. Talk about gig economy. Really good friend of mine, great service, you should all check it out, called Gigster. And Gigster is a place to hire software engineers for gigs. And you can imagine the presence of such things makes it difficult, again, to retain these young students and have them respect that long-term perspective. What's going to fix this, I think, is that over time, as the Make School name becomes more known, as people realize next year, oh my gosh, this is the school that Google hired out of. Google didn't hire out of the school that my child goes to. Maybe if they should go to Make School. Once these associations start being built, people will want to see it through because they want to have that stamp that they completed the Make School experience, and we want to see it through. We'd rather have them for longer because it allows us to really set them on a better trajectory for the rest of their lives.
So how do you see yourself competing against these kind of, other word for it, legacy educational institutions?
Yeah.
Because if you look at top tier, man, for the past 300 years, every other college has been trying to take them down.
Yeah.
Still haven't done it.
Yep.
And so, how do you see yourself fighting against the inevitable backlash? Because as soon as you start really taking some money out of traditional education's pockets, traditional education is going to have like the biggest reaction to your service.
You know, I don't know if they're culturally inclined to behave that way. They're very happy at the size that they are. They reject so many students that would be willing to pay to go to their institutions that even if I stole 100, 200, 300, 500 people from Harvard's admit pool, they would still fill their classes with amazingly high quality students from all around the world.
But it's not an issue of getting the 500 rejects. It's
No, I said admit pool. I said admit pool.
Okay.
And here's the thing. We have a very special in. Very special in. We focus on a segment of education where universities are doing the worst job and where industry demand is the highest. It's the best place to be, right? Universities are really, really, really messing up their computer science education. MIT right now is using the same curriculum that they used that was designed in 2007 and that was there when I was a student. Harvard got a $60 million donation from Steve Ballmer of Microsoft. $60 million to Harvard. With $60 million, Harvard was able to hire only 12 new professors because of the way that their rules around tenure and pre-funding the lifetime salary professors work, and they're only able to increase the class size of 100 students. If you give me $60 million, I'll take over the world. Harvard with $60 million can add 12 professors.
I want to work at Harvard.
Right, yeah, we're in the wrong line of work. So how we compete is we are in the heart of the Silicon Valley, and we can go direct to the employers. And so we can short circuit the prestige process by having companies say, you know what, your students are right here, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to meet them. And now we've signed 25 plus corporate partnerships, including with companies like LinkedIn and Lyft, that are starting to include us in their university recruiting hiring. So their university recruiters actually come to Make School, even though we've only been around for a year. And we're down the street for most of them. I mean, literally, Make School is a block away from Uber, a block away from Twitter, a block away from Square, right? And so that's, on the employer side, we can really, really do great there. We have all the top Silicon Valley tech investors, so we get an in from that perspective. Our investors connect us to a lot of companies. And from the student perspective, we actually get more people transferring out of their first year of university than we do get people coming out of high school. Trying to convince a high school student not to go to Harvard Computer Science or not go to MIT Computer Science is really hard.
Yeah.
Our entire society has built up such an idealized vision of what it must be like to go to MIT Computer Science. If you have an MIT admission letter in your hand, how can you say no? That sounds crazy. But it turns out that when students go for a year, it's not so hard to get them to come to Make School, at least for the ones that are the right fit. Once they see the reality of it and the state that higher education is in for specifically computer science and for specifically the students that want to work in industry as opposed to go into research, those students are feeling a lot of pain right now. That's why you have thousands of students every weekend at hackathons. They're sacrificing their weekends to self-teach industry-relevant tools and technologies and try to build exciting things with them because they're not getting the satisfaction out of school. If every university was like Make School, then weekend hackathons might not exist.
So when you talk, I understand the point that you're making, especially about the people who get there, see not everything that glitters is gold and wants to move on. Now over here in Asia, people might say, okay, I'm in the University of Tokyo, I'm in National University Singapore, I don't really like it. Man, I don't know if they're leaving that. I really don't know if they're leaving that. Like, if the number of people who drop out of Harvard after a year or MIT after 2 years is small, in Asia that's got to be minuscule. So is this 2-year program something you think you can bring to Asia?
So the attitude that you're describing is one that comes more from parents than from students. This new generation is changing really fast. We're finding that young students now perceive social impact as a bigger social currency than money. And it's becoming cool to work on exciting projects and have an exciting impact at work as opposed to just being a banker and making a lot of money. And so surprisingly, we get a huge number of applications from Asia. A huge number. I was in Taiwan a couple days ago at an info session where there was nearly 100 students there to learn about Make School. It was supposed to be about our summer program in Taipei, and I only got questions about our 2-year program. So we have a tremendous number of applications from Asia, and all the students will say, my parents will never let me do it, but I really want to come to make school. And over time, once it becomes the school that you go to get a job at Google and Facebook and the next top startup, I think parents will be okay with it. So over time, the straight out of high school number will increase relative to the after first year dropout number.
Okay, so we're just about out of time. I want to say thank you for joining us. It's great to kind of hear the perspective of someone building a unique business like your own. And actually, you have a session today.
I do.
So yeah, if you want to take one of Jeremy's courses, we're offering it in the developer stage at 3 p.m., right?
3 p.m., I'll teach you how to make a simple iPhone app. So if you've never done iPhone development before, come see me teach it.
Okay, so one more round of applause for Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining.